a great big guy, sticks his head up through the sky. Paul's a great big guy, holds his head up high. He's the biggest, strongest, tallest, longest, hardest working lumberjack. He's real polite, so don't get uptight just because he's big. Paul's a great big guy, sticks his head up through the sky. Paul's a great big guy, holds his head up high.
A lot of people will tell you about Paul Bunyan like they know the straight story. But they don't know an axe handle from an ox yoke in my book. Shoot, 99.9% of them wasn't even there. Well, I was, by Jiminy. Paul Bunyan ran the crackest logging outfit there ever was. Paul flat out invented logging, and by the time he got done, the United States was fit for living. Listen up, and I'll tell you about Paul Bunyan, the greatest logging man there ever was. Now, first time I saw Paul Bunyan was the winter of the blue snow. Me and the boys were sitting in our cabin, huddled around the potbelly stove. Outside, the snow was falling fast, furious, and blue. That's right. It's a fact. The snow came out of the sky as blue as a robin's egg. That's why they called it the winter of the blue snow. Pancakes was our dinner for the 310th night in a row. We was concentrating on talking and chewing with our mouths closed when it started thundering outside. Then I seen him. He was coming through the woods, his eye level with the treetops, pushing pines out of his way like they was cornstalks, and he was carrying the biggest, mightiest, dang darnest axe I ever seen. The blade looked to be a hammered-down locomotive. I ain't a-kidding you. And there was no drink in my body. We all ran outside to get a better look at what was coming our way, and there he stood. Whew, large as a mountain. "Sorry to intrude, boys," he said, real friendly-like. "Name's Paul Bunyan. What do you fellas got cooking? I've been eating beans all winter long, and when I got a whiff of your victuals, I had to stop by." Well, now, we happen to have the greatest cook this side of Kalamazoo, Hot Biscuit Sally. And her pancakes were such good eating that we had 'em morning, noon, and night. So Sal made up a king-size batch of pancakes for our guest, and in no time at all, he was eating and talking. "I'm clearing the timber off of Sulphur Mountain," Paul explained. Me and the boys knowed that Sulphur Mountain was so steep that a person trying to walk up it would fall over backwards. You mean you're clearing off Sulphur Mountain by yourself?" I says. "Yeah," says Paul. The boys didn't know what to think. Either this lad had beans in his head, or he knowed a few things about logging that we didn't. Brimstone Bill was getting a little hot under the collar. Brimstone could cuss a blue streak, and he got especially perturbed when he thought a body was bragging. "How in tarnation do you expect us to believe that you're clearing that land by your lonesome?" he snarled. "I always work alone," said Paul. "Dad, blame it," cried Brimstone. "Then show us how you does it, 'cause I think you're full of soup." The only thing I'm full of right now is pancakes, and I'm feeling the need for some exercise," said Paul, patting his belly and stretching. He got up, hefted his axe, and walked into the woods. "All righty, boys, stand clear!" Paul spat into his hands and choked the end of his axe handle. He wound up and swung. He felled 23 trees with that first swing. Any one of those trees would have taken you or me at least 6 hours of chopping. Then he got his rhythm, and he started swinging like a tornado going through a toothpick factory. Paul cleared 40 acres during his little demonstration, and when the dust settled, any trees that were left standing took one look around and laid down in fright. "Well, that's how I do it," says Paul. He wasn't bragging either. That boy was just the biggest, bestest, toughest, strongest, ding-dandiest logger there ever was. And that's how we all come to join up with Paul during the winter of the blue snow.
Paul's a great big guy, sticks his head up through the sky. Paul's a great big guy, holds his head up high.
One fine winter's day, while Paul was out scouting the countryside, he came across a baby ox buried in the blue snow. Poor little fella was froze stiff as a plank. Paul dug him out of the drift. That calf had been in the snow so long that his hide was dyed solid blue. Paul blew 3 warm breaths into the calf, and that critter opened his eyes like he'd just been born. Well, sir, when he looked up with them big blue eyes, something inside of Paul began to melt. Paul Bunyan was a strapping man and stronger than a grizzly bear. And when he cradled that blue ox calf in his arms, he was as gentle as an angel. "Now there's nothing to worry about. I'm taking care of you, babe, and I always will." That's what everybody called the calf from then on, Babe. From the get-go, Babe ate a ton of grain a day and was always looking for more. The fellers noticed that if they watched Babe for 5 minutes, they could see him grow right before their eyes. By the time Babe stopped growing, the distance between the tips of his horns measured 142 axe handles, 4 bottles of sassafras soda, a plug of chewing tobacco, and a hard-boiled egg. We was cutting through the woods like nobody's business when one day Paul got a letter from Teddy Roosevelt, the President of the United States. Seems Mr. Roosevelt was in a fix, and he needed a hand. This is how the letter read. The White House, Washington, D.C. Greetings, Paul Bunyan. I wish to congratulate you on the bully job you and your crew have done clearing the great states of Wisconsin and Minnesota. We just don't have enough room in this country for all our people to live. I understand the Dakota Territory would make a perfect place for settlers' homes. Unfortunately, the entire place is covered with trees. With the power vested in me by the American people, I hereby order you to clear the Dakotas by next spring. Thank you in advance for your help, and bully for you. Yours truly, Teddy Roosevelt, the President. Well, if that ain't a kick in the britches, Paul said to the boys. But if that's what the President wants, then that's what he's going to get. And with that, Paul dashed off a letter to Teddy Roosevelt. The woods, somewhere near Minnesota. Dear Mr. President, consider the job done. I'll take care of clearing the Dakotas presently, forthwithly, hence. Sincerely, Paul Bunyan, logger. In those days, the Dakotas were one gigantic forest, so thick with trees you had to pry your way in. There wasn't a lick of open land in the entire territory. The trees were tall and fat, and the wood was so hard you'd dull your axe with just a single swing. Clearing the Dakotas was the toughest lumber job there ever was, even for Paul Bunyan and his men. Didn't take long for word to get around that Paul was doing some serious work out there. Loggers started coming out of the woodwork to work those woods with Paul's crew. Johnny Inkslinger was the accountant for Paul's logging enterprise, and even he couldn't count all the men. The loggers slept in bunk beds with 10 decks. So Johnny tried counting the bunks and multiplying by 10 to figure the number of men employed. He gave up counting at 10,623. That's a lot of men. Boarding the boys was an even bigger problem. Poor Hot Biscuit Sally was making pancakes 6 ways to Christmas, trying to keep everybody fed.
Paul, she said, I've burned out 3 griddles this morning alone, and some of our boys still don't have their breakfast. I don't want any logger going without pancakes. Now, what are we going to do about it?
Sounds like we need a bigger griddle, Paul replied. So Paul had Ole Jolson, the blacksmith, melt down 53 dozen steel plows and forge a griddle that was 1.5 acres across. Well, close to that. Paul and Babe hauled it back to camp. When the two of them got to the peak of Thunder Mountain, Paul decided to ride the griddle the rest of the way. "Look out below," he yelled. With that, he took off, riding the griddle and giving out a whoop and holler that darn near made the needles of the pine trees thread themselves and rattle the teeth and the heads of every man, woman, and beast in the territory. He roared down that mountain, slicing through the trees and kicking up boulders, spraying them this way and that, and just about scaring the pants off everything and everybody in his path. Paul tore into camp, followed by an avalanche of freshly cut trees, hanging on to that griddle for dear life. It was spinning like a top, and as it spun, it dug out a hole in the earth under it, 57 feet, 4 1/4 inches deep. The avalanche of 22,000 logs filled that hole just as the griddle flopped down over it. The heat from the spinning caused the logs to catch fire, and it wasn't long before Hot Biscuit Sal was making her first batch of pancakes on her new griddle. Paul had us build a tank on a tower so Sal could just open a chute and pour the pancake batter right onto the griddle. To grease it, Paul had 26 men strap hunks of bacon to their feet and skate on it. I guess you could say we was eating a lot of pancakes in Dakota. With Paul chopping and Babe toting, the two of them made the perfect logging team. Paul would drop a couple of 100 trees onto Babe's sled and would whisper sweetly into Babe's ear. And Babe would yank that load clear into tomorrow. That ox pulled that sled so hard, he would straighten the chain that held it into a solid iron bar. Ole Jolson had to make a new chain every week, 'cause Babe burned out so many of them. Having an animal that big around camp did present its share of problems. Once Babe was swatting bullflies off his back with his tail when he caught Brimstone Bill between the mustaches and sent him clear over the ridge. Brimstone got up cussing and swearing, aiming to show Babe who was the boss bullwhacker and who was the ox. When Brimstone got back to camp, Babe just gave him one of his big love licks on the face, and Brimstone melted like butter. For weeks that fall, the rain poured down in buckets, and we was in mud up to our knees. One night, frightened by lightning, Babe broke out and ran all over the countryside, clear into Minnesota. By morning, his king-sized hoof prints had filled up with rainwater, creating a lake out of every single one of them. That's why there's 10,000 lakes in Minnesota to this very day. It was Babe who done it. President Teddy Roosevelt wanted the Dakotas cleared by spring. Word was out that settlers was already heading out there, ready to move in. We was logging faster than a hog eats supper, but come February, we wasn't even halfway through. There was no way our crew was going to complete the job by spring. We were getting desperate. But then a lucky thing happened. Spring never came that year. Folks called it the year of two winters because there was one winter right after the other. On the 4th of July, it was 45 degrees below zero, and August was even colder. On the one hand, having two winters gave Paul more time to log off Dakota. On the other hand, being doubly cold didn't make it any easier getting the job done. It was so cold that Paul's orders to his men froze in midair. Even Brimstone Bill's cussing failed to burn anybody's ears. It was bleak going toward the end of that second winter. Paul still had a third of the Dakotas left to log with only 2 weeks till spring. Paul and his loggers were slowed to a standstill by the huge pile of cut trees. We were having a darn awful time hauling the timber out of there because the road was so crooked. The road not only had S-turns and Z-turns and U-turns, it had turns shaped like every letter in the dad-blame alphabet, including a few that ain't even been invented yet. Paul had to do something about that road, so he sat and gave it some thought. And while he thought, he tapped on the ground with his axe. The faster he tapped, the faster he thought, until he was tapping and thinking up a storm. Rocks was rolling this way and that, and the ground was heaving up and down in the weirdest shapes you ever saw. Suddenly, Paul leaped up and cried out, "Suffering sequoias! I got it!" And this was his idea. He hooked up Babe to the far end of the road and gave the blue ox the word to pull. It was that simple. Babe started grunting and snorting and pawing and pulling, and wouldn't you know it, the road started to move out. That little bit of give in the road was all Babe needed to feel. He just started marching in a straight line, dragging that road behind him, straightening it as true as a crow flies. As for that strange land Paul created with this tapping, well, we called it the Badlands on account of no one could ever figure out how to live there. Once Babe straightened out the road, Paul Bunyan and his men worked day and night to keep on schedule. There were no breaks for chow and no sleeping.